Actually, we are in a situation in a LC, during the LC, 16 years later, the Declaration of the Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work, to discuss again FPRW with a lot of support from some governments, but also with a lot of resistance coming from employers on the very fundamental issue that we touch in our report, freedom of association, collective bargaining, child labor, forced labor. But the webinar is available in English, this event, French, Spanish, and Russian. It's being recorded, and the recording will be made publicly available later. So, in the next hour, you will get the main findings of 2024 ITUC Global Rights Index from the ITUC Legal Director, Papadanka, followed by reaction from the ITUC Secretary General, Luc Triangle. We will hear from trade unionists working in some of the worst countries in the world for working people, namely Belarus, Eswatini, and the Philippines, but also colleagues from Argentina and Palestine. They will get a look at attack on democracy and workers' rights by talking for their specific realities in these countries. Europe, surprisingly, is with the biggest decline, with the worst decline during the last 10 years, the Global Rights Index shows. And in Europe now, the right to strike being violated on the 3/4 in the European countries, and right to collective bargaining is really violated as well. The more historical strike in Sweden against Tesla on the refusal of collective bargaining. So I'm starting with being from Europe with this one, just to put in our minds this social model that we all subscribe with actually is also under attack, and the social model in the Nordic countries, including the fundamental rights, are in a severe attack too. So not to delay anymore, and to begin with the ITUC Legal Director, Papadanka, that you're gonna present to us ITUC Global Rights Index main findings. Papa, you have the floor.
Plamen. Good to see everyone, and good to have the launch of the index back during the ILC. I'll present the main findings of the 2024 ITUC Global Rights Index, which is in its 11th edition. This year, violations continue to be at record levels. 87% of countries violated the right to strike. In the first edition of the index in 2014, this figure was closer to 60%. This year's report includes cases of working people facing prosecution for taking strike action in France, Cambodia, Cameroon, and elsewhere. 79% of countries violated the right to collective bargaining, a key democratic workplace right. This is an increase from 63% 11 years ago. The 2024 index has examples from Italy, Sweden, the Netherlands, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Africa. 75% of countries excluded working people from the right to establish or join a trade union, a very fundamental right of workers. In the first edition of the index, this was under 60%. Also, 74% of countries impeded the registration of unions, and in 65% of countries, workers had no or restricted access to justice. 43% of countries restricted the right to free speech and assembly. The number of countries arresting and detaining workers has increased to 74 from 45. Workers experienced violence in 44 countries, including Sri Lanka, Nigeria, and the Republic of Korea. In Colombia, Guatemala, and Honduras, working people and their representatives faced endemic violence. Tragically, 22 trade unionists lost their lives in 6 countries over the past year: Bangladesh, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, the Philippines, and the Republic of Korea. Again, the worst region in the world for working people is the Middle East and North Africa. We should also note the worsening of the situation for working people in Europe, as Chair Plamen already indicated. From 2014 to 2024, its rating has fallen from 1.84 to 2.73, the biggest decline of any region in the world. The 10 worst countries for working people in 2024 are the following: Bangladesh, Belarus, Ecuador, Egypt, Eswatini, Guatemala, Myanmar, the Philippines, Tunisia, and Turkey. Violations include state-led repression and an aggressive posture towards unions, unjustified detention of union activists, death threats, union busting, and the abolition of freedom of association. 2 countries have improved ratings. Romania moved from 4 to 3 as the government restored basic universal rights, such as the right to collective bargaining. Brazil is rated 4, an improvement on 5 last year, as the government took steps to restore social dialogue between workers, employers, and policymakers. However, a dozen countries have worse ratings: Costa Rica, Finland, Israel, Kyrgyzstan, Madagascar, Nigeria, Qatar, the Russian Federation, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Switzerland, and Venezuela. Many of these governments have undermined meaningful social dialogue, the right to strike and protest, and/or have no genuine freedom of association. The ITUC Global Rights Index is unique. Nothing else tracks the degree of respect for workers' rights in law and practice across the world. We can use it to expose the governments who undermine the rights of working people and demand the enactment of laws needed to protect workers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Papa. As we just said, the ITUC Global Rights Index is unique. It's based on a low ranking in 151 countries against a list of 97 indicators between ILO Conventions and jurisprudence and such as only database in such a kind. Now it's time to turn to the Secretary General of the ITUC, Luc Triangle. Luc, you have the floor, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Plamen. Thank you, Papa, for your introduction. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who contributed to this important index and to this important report. And indeed, for 11 years now, the ITUC Global Rights Index has told an undeniable story. Workers' rights have declined in every region of the world. And this year's report offers an urgent wake-up call that the democratic values and the fundamental rights agreed upon by most countries at an international level are crumbling. And despite some improvements, the general picture shows a relentless attack on civil liberties, workers' rights, and the interests of working people. And Papa has just presented the figures, but behind them are real people. Workers and trade unions persecuted for demanding rights guaranteed to them in international law. In Guatemala, on October 4th, 2023, Doris Lisette Aldana Calderon was brutally murdered on her way home. The 33-year-old mother of 4 children was the leader of the Citrabi Union, one of 2 union representatives at Badegua, a subsidiary of the global brand Del Monte. In the Philippines, on September 29, 2023, 67-year-old organizer Jude Tadeus Fernandez from the KMU Trade Union Center was shot dead during a police raid. He was the 72nd victim of labor-related killings in the country since July 2016. In Eswatini, the General Secretary of the Swatkau Union, Stix Kwambule, remains in hiding after being placed on a government's wanted list, one assassination attempt and having his home raided by police. In Tunisia, a government decree now penalizes dissent with a prison sentence of up to 5 years. Union leader Nasser Ben Amara was arrested for a Facebook post criticizing the government. Deputy General Secretary of the UGT, Taher Medzi, was arrested just before a scheduled protest. Both clear attempts to hinder their legitimate trade union work. In Sweden, the EF Metall Union called to strike at Tesla in the face of an anti-union stance and a refusal to engage in collective bargaining. For decades, Sweden's social democracy, where workplace conditions are agreed through negotiations between workers and employers, has delivered a stable labor market where 90% of workers are covered by collective agreements. And Tesla aims to try to end that. The European case is indeed significant. For decades, the region has been viewed as an example for the rest of the world to follow for workers' rights. But that's no longer the case. Workers' rights have deteriorated in Europe at a faster rate than any other part of the world over the past 10 years. And while the speed and scale of Europe's decline is unprecedented, the general trend across regions is actually the same. From the Middle East and North Africa to Asia Pacific, to Africa, to the Americas, every region's rating is below its 2014 score. And for workers, this attack on their rights accompanies a devastating cost of living crisis amid technological disruption that is rapidly changing the world of work. And meanwhile, in increasing numbers of violent conflicts around the world, they are forced to endure the catastrophic consequences of war. But there is hope. We live in an age where diverse stakeholders of democracy and global economy seek greater clarity on the actions of governments and companies. Investors and consumers want to make informed choices as shareholders, customers, and voters. And for them, this index offers a vital summary of the treatment of workers, unions, and democracy around the world. It can support informed, considered, ethical choices from the high street to the boardroom. Workers are the beating part of democracy, and their voices are crucial to ensure the health and sustainability of representative systems of government. When rights are violated, democracy is attacked. Right now, the world faces the mounting threat of far right, vested interests focused on eroding workers' freedoms and basic human rights, and aimed at tightening their grip on power and increasing corporate profits at the expense of ordinary working people. And the ITUC's For Democracy campaign aims to defend and strengthen the pillars of democracy against right-wing vested interests. Working people can join us in the fight back by demanding and building a new social contract with decent jobs, just wages, social protection, fundamental rights, and the assurance of equality and inclusion, ensuring a system that works for them and their bosses. As the 2024 index shows, trade unionists take grave risks to improve the lives of colleagues and defend democratic rights. Whether it occurs in the workplace, in society, or at a global level, this is our shared struggle. And as the international trade union movement strives to defend democratic values and the rights that underpin them, it is clear our movement must continue to play an integral role in shaping a fairer and safer world for all. And the ITUC, together with the global union federations, together with all the national affiliates, will continue to defend and strengthen our fair rights, the workers' rights. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much of our Secretary General for remarks and the issues that have been highlighted. And now we are turning to the worst countries for working people. And our brothers and sisters from 3 out of all those 10 that we have listed in our report, our Global Rights Index. Belarus. In Belarus, we have 42 trade union leaders still in jail after almost 4 years trying to help them, including Alexander Yaroshchuk, who is the governing body of the ILO, member, president of Belarusian Congress of Democratic Trade Unions. So now we have, I hope, with us, Elizaveta Merliak online from BKDP. She will speak in English, and Elizaveta, please, will tell us about the situation now in Belarus.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brother Plamen, for inviting me to speak in front of this audience.
We have to put your earphones just to listen. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Plamen, again to invite me to speak in front of this audience. That's a shame that Belarus, my country, is again in the list of the 10 worst countries in the world for workers. It's not the first time, right? Belarus was one of the world champions in violating trade union rights since years, and in the ILO there was a special case about the violation of trade union rights in Belarus called 2090. And in the fight against the freedom of association, the government of Belarus has gone so far that last year the International Labour Conference passed a resolution and started to apply Article 33 of the ILO Constitution against the government of Belarus for violations of the freedom of association. And yes, you're right. There are 42 brothers and sisters imprisoned at the moment in Belarus. And among them are very different people of different professions, people of different age. Among them are parents, mothers and fathers, chemical workers, miners, doctors, oncologists, engineers. Among them is our leader, the president of the Belarusian Congress of Democratic Trade Unions, Alexander Yaroshchuk. And we are constantly demanding his release from prison. In 2022, on 19th of April, there were over 20 union leaders arrested at the same time in Belarus, and among them was Alexander Yaroshchuk. He got an imprisonment term of 4 years. And recently, just in 1 year, his conditions in jail worsened. He had been transferred from an open colony to a covered prison. That means that he's limited in the freedom of movement. He is locked in a cell with several other so-called criminals. And I should also mention that he has some health issues that deteriorated during his stay in prison. There are trade unionists, women, who are also in jail. They are 6 at the moment, and at this very moment, at this very time, there is a court hearing going on in Belarus, and our sister Volga Britikova is tried again. It is about 6 years imprisonment that she might probably be sentenced to for allegedly for high treason, for being not loyal to the state, for asking for sanctions, for many things that she was not doing actually. And the government of Belarus calls our brothers and sisters extremists and terrorists, while we, trade unionists, real trade unionists, and human rights defenders call them political prisoners. You should also know that in Belarusian prisons, this category of criminals is marked with a special sign, a yellow label, which is sewn to their uniforms. This label is a target for prison officers to mistreat this category of prisoners, and they are very often put to solitary confinement jails. Those are cages. Those are cells, cold cells, with no bedding, with limited access to open air. It is extremely cold there in winter. It is extremely hot there and humid during the summertime. So Alexander Yarashuk was placed in such a cell several times. I mentioned that among the 42 political prisoners, trade unionists, there are 6 women, and these 6 women, they are kept in so-called colonies where they are forced to work. And in Belarus, women in prison, they work in textile shops, sewing uniforms for the military. So it looks like it is a double punishment to make the political prisoners sew uniforms for those who actually arrested them and keeps them in jail. There are many bad news from Belarus, but there are also some good news that several brothers and sisters who once were in the list of political prisoners, they are released. The bad thing about it is that they are released after completely serving their entire term in jail. So it didn't happen earlier. It happened only when they served the whole term. And another bad news is that they are not completely free after they are released from prison. They have to visit the police and report on what they are doing. They are denied freedom of movement. They can't leave the borders of the country. They can't even leave the borders of the city where they reside without special permission from the police. At the same time, they have to go and listen to lectures of ideological propaganda character, and they are deprived of a right to occupy special job positions. However, in Belarus, you don't have a right to work. You are obliged to work. If you don't work, that is accepted by the government as if you were a social parasite. And this is what our comrades who are released from jail and who are still in Belarus are facing. Well, there are many things that could prove once again that Belarus is rightfully put in this list of 10 worst countries for the workers. And one of those facts is that in 2022, all the democratic trade unions, including the Belarusian Congress of Democratic Trade Unions, were liquidated by the state. All media that belongs to the trade unions was made extremist materials, and for reading this media, workers in Belarus would face administrative arrests. These administrative arrests might lead to dismissal from work because being absent while being under arrest is not a good reason for being absent from work. That means that that workers do not
I
even
just
have a
wanted
right.
to warn you that we have to keep a time schedule. So we have 1 more minute. Please try to focus to conclude. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Plamen. Just recently, the materials that we produce, Solidarность, this is an organization that represents Belarusian Congress of Democratic Trade Unions in exile, had been announced extremist materials, and it means that we are called extremists ourselves in Belarus. Well, I should also I should conclude that there is always hope. Like Brother Luke said, there is hope. And I should also say that there is hope that one day Belarus will become a democratic country, and that the workers will be the leading force that makes Belarus democratic again. We should start with the release of all political prisoners in Belarus. And I hope that ITUC will have this power to unite the global South and the global North in the fight for democracy and workers' rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Liz, for this very emotional statements, and it's made us really sad, but also angry, I believe, and ready to continue not only to support you by any means, but to fight together with you to finally reach our ultimate goal, to release the unions leaders that are in jail, but also to try to restore democracy in your country and the union, freedom, and also human freedom, human rights. Time is running, and I have to move to the next speaker. Next speaker is coming from Eswatini, Gina Mduduzi, from the Union to Kosovo. Before giving him the floor, just short, very short, my personal memory on that. In 2019, I was vice chair of the Centenary Conference, and then your king was approaching and addressing the conference, and I was the guy giving him the floor, and I was really surprised because at that time, Eswatini was also violating trade union and labor rights, and I was surprised how this head of state of such a country is allowed to address the Centenary Conference of the ILO. So I'm not wrong at that time, and now it's pity that you're going to confirm with much more facts, and I hope some specific also issues that would make us be ready to help. So, Gina, you have the floor.
Very much, Brother Moderator. I think at this point, our approach will be to say, perhaps it is important that we start by attempting to explain or shed some light on why we find ourselves here. On actual fact, the origins of the challenges that the workers and the peoples of Eswatini are facing. What are the origins? I will be briefly. In fact, they are founded on the political scheme of things that exist in the country. Trade union rights and general civil liberties are regarded as foreign concepts designed to interfere with the traditional and customary way of life of Emaswati. That's the general approach that is there. In fact, we have noted that in the DNA of the governance system, there are repellents of these rights. It then gets embedded in the bone marrows of the authorities under the veil of culture and to some extent, religious obedience. And in actual fact, the repression and autocracy has become an institutionalized governance culture. In the King's proclamation to the nation, which revoked a popular constitution and banned political parties, as the moderator was saying, the King was addressing the assembly. In that proclamation, which revoked a popular constitution, the King, in Article 2, paragraph C, proclaimed as follows, I quote, that the Constitution has permitted the importation into our country of highly undesirable political practices, alien to and incompatible with the way of life in our society, and designed to disrupt and destroy our own peaceful and constructive and essentially democratic methods of political activity. Increasingly, this element creates hostility, bitterness, and unrest in our peaceful society. That is how the popular constitution was thrown away. He concluded his proclamation, which was later to be likened to a coup d'etat by the Supreme Court. He proclaimed in Article 3 of that decree or proclamation that, open quotes, I have assumed supreme power in the Kingdom of Swaziland, and that all legislative, executive, and judicial power is vested in myself, and shall for the meantime be exercised in collaboration with a council constituted by my cabinet ministers. I further declare that to ensure the continued maintenance of peace, order, and good government, my armed forces, in conjunction with the Swaziland Royal Police, have been posted to all strategic places and have taken charge of all government and all public services. I further declare that I, in collaboration with my cabinet ministers, hereby declare that I've only taken Article 11 of that declaration. Article 11 would say all political parties and similar bodies. Then now the reference of similar bodies, it was opening a net to the banning of trade unions themselves. Because the banning, it was intended for all political parties, but then it then continued to say all similar bodies. And it was, that net was opened then now to catch trade unions. And it continues that cultivate and bring about disturbances and ill feelings within the nation are hereby dissolved and prohibited. What then followed was then that the teachers' union was banned, the private sector unions, the employers stopped making deductions, stop order deductions for affiliation fees. And to date, they are continuing with that irregular deduction of stop order fees. In the sense that if you are having a membership of 1,000, I'm just making an example. This month they would deduct for 400. And then if you go to court, they would then, just before the matter is heard in court, then they would say they would deduct in the following month. Or what they can do would be that they would not deduct. And you would go to court, the matter would not be heard in court. They would not deduct again. But when you then ultimately go to court, they would want to deduct for 3 months so that they cause confusion in between the union and the membership. Then in Article 12 of that decree, then the king said, no meetings of a political nature and no processions or demonstrations shall be held or take place in any public place unless with the prior written consent of the Commissioner of Police. And consent shall not be given if the Commissioner of Police has reason to believe that such meeting, procession, or demonstration is directly or indirectly, yes, or indirectly related to political movements. What is happening now is the same, notwithstanding then the coming into force of a constitution in 2005, which we had hoped was intended to repeal this decree. It was not repealed. The situation remains the same. We confirm that indeed a lot of our colleagues are in exile and we are not allowed to meet. We were told we can only be 10. Now in a meeting, any number beyond that would not be allowed. We confirm the finding that has been found in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. We stand together with all teachers and transport workers union leaders that actually are having problems, being fired, or in a way prosecuted in Eswatini, or at least having big problems with authority. Now we move to Asia Pacific region. It's actually second worst after the Middle East and Northern Africa region in the world in terms of how the working people are living and working. So nice coronation, is that pronunciation? Sorry, from the Union Centro will tell us in English about the life for working people in the Philippines, where recently 2 brothers were killed, Alex Dolorosa, Bien, and Yunde Fernandez. Please, nice, you have the floor.
Hello, sisters and brothers. Back home, it's National Independence Day, and one of its core message is freedom. But here we are. We cannot fully exercise our rights to freedom of association and other rights. It is a national disgrace that our country has been listed among the world's 10 worst countries for workers for 8 years. This persistent failure is not just a statistic. It is a damning indictment of our government's repeated neglect and disrespect for labor rights. Contrary to its pretensions, the Marcos administration is no different from its predecessor in its blatant disregard for the welfare of our workers. This ongoing crisis has been made possible by the government's unwillingness to dismantle the architecture of impunity established under the Duterte administration, a draconian machinery known as the National Task Force to End Local Communists. Despite the clear recommendation from the ILO High-Level Tripartite Mission last January 2023, the government continues to fail in implementing necessary reforms. That's why we are also back in the short list for the Committee on Application of Standards. This black mark on our nation's record threatens to unravel all the investment efforts the Marcos government has been painstakingly courting. Investors are looking for stable, fair, and just environments to place their capital. Our continued poor ranking undermines these efforts and could potentially drive away much-needed economic opportunities. The blame for this disgrace falls squarely on Secretary Laguesma. His incapability to empathize with the plight of the working class has led to this dire situation. His failure to address the critical needs of our workers has been a significant factor in our continued poor standing. We urge the government and employers, stop denying the labor rights violations. Stop ignoring the injustices brought about by trade union killings, red tagging, abductions, surveillance, and other forms of harassment. Let's work together to take our country out of this shameful list. And we are very working hard. To our team here, to our fellow brothers and sisters in the labor movement, let's work together so that we can fully realize all the recommendation of the high-level tripartite mission for the Philippine case, so that we can really fully exercise our right to freedom of association. Together, we can avoid the looming disaster of being subjected to the ILO's Commission of Inquiry and restore our honor's nation's dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice. We are standing behind your fight. And of course, we are with you in all these difficult times in your country. So we have two more speakers in our list here today. And let's move to the not the worst countries for the working people in terms of working conditions or violation of the workers' rights, but in the area of democratic rights violations and the area with divorce. So 2024 index makes it clear that this is a link between workers' rights and democracy. You can't have one without the other. And Daniel Uria from the Union of the CTI in Argentina will tell us in Spanish about how the far right in Argentina that took power in the end of last year is attacking workers' rights in his own country. And Daniel, please go ahead, have the floor.
Es un honor y un placer para nuestra central participar de este ámbito que es el más alto donde podemos expresar las violaciones a los derechos humanos laborales en el mundo. Nuestros aportes desde Argentina. Decirle que desde la llegada de Milei al gobierno, los trabajadores en la Argentina estamos bajo ataque permanente y la democracia también. Asistimos a un experimento neoliberal y neofascista que se proyecta al mundo con un presidente que se abraza a las corporaciones económicas y financieras del mundo e intenta disolver el Estado a quien considera una asociación criminal y dice: soy un topo que desde adentro lo voy a destruir, amo ser yo quien lo destruya. Todos sabemos que la destrucción del Estado es la destrucción de nuestros derechos y el incremento del poder de las corporaciones económicas. Estamos ante un cambio de paradigma y de valores, donde la libertad económica se impone como un valor supremo y lo demás no importa nada. Su crueldad llega al extremo de gozar y disfrutar del sufrimiento humano. Para ello propone arrasar con la justicia social y para el logro de su objetivo desarrolló distintas herramientas que dejan en claro que miente y hace trampa cuando proclama la libertad absoluta del Dios mercado para resolver todos los males, ya que allí libera las fuerzas económicas, pero restringe y ataca las fuerzas y la libertad de los trabajadores. Nos preguntamos, ¿acaso no fue allí, en el libre juego de las fuerzas del mercado, donde obtuvimos con luchas nuestros derechos? Así fue con la huelga, con la libertad sindical y con la de la negociación colectiva. La pregunta es, ¿cómo arrasa con la justicia social? Primero sancionó un protocolo para el mantenimiento del orden público, que autoriza a las fuerzas policiales a intervenir en los cortes de la vía pública sin orden judicial, identificar, sancionar a las organizaciones, a sus dirigentes, identificar e incautar vehículos y demandar judicialmente a las organizaciones para que paguen los operativos policiales. En cada movilización de nuestra central nos llegan multas de 40, 50 y 60 millones de pesos. Este protocolo termina prohibiendo los derechos fundamentales como la libertad sindical, la libertad de expresión, el derecho a la protección social, convirtiéndolos en un delito. Segundo, a posteriori el presidente Milei intenta dar un golpe institucional y arrogarse unilateralmente el poder absoluto a través de un decreto de necesidad de urgencia 70/23, en el que asume la facultad legislativa y modifica con más de 300 artículos muchas leyes violando la división de poderes, la competencia legislativa del Congreso de la Nación, todo absolutamente prohibido por nuestra Constitución. Ante el rechazo de la sociedad SDNU, que intervenía en las relaciones individuales del trabajo a favor de los trabajadores e instauraba un decálogo de reglas antisindicales, atacando el derecho de huelga, la ultraactividad de los convenios colectivos de trabajo, el financiamiento de los sindicatos, restringía las indemnizaciones y eliminaba las sanciones al trabajo no registrado, esta reforma laboral de este DNU hasta ahora está frenada por la justicia del trabajo en Argentina. Inmediatamente se lanzó con la denominada Ley Ómnibus, 634 artículos, intentando legalizar el DNU, agregando además la privatización de 43 empresas del Estado, la liberación de tarifas, la eliminación de los controles del Estado en la vida económica, quedando el Estado solo habilitado para criminalizar la protesta social. Esta Ley Ómnibus también cayó en el Congreso con la Nación, gracias a las movilizaciones de las 3 centrales sindicales y organizaciones sociales, presionando a los legisladores y con el contundente paro activo del 24 de enero pasado. Hoy nuevamente vuelve a atacar con la ley base que nos lleva al siglo XIX en materia laboral, donde intenta cambiar puestos de trabajo con derechos por puestos de trabajo sin derechos. Apunta a la deslaborización del derecho del trabajo, eliminando sus principios protectorios. Esta ley está siendo tratada hoy en el Congreso de la Nación Argentina, rodeado por todo el pueblo, convocado por las centrales sindicales y las organizaciones sociales y organismos de derechos humanos, con una contundente presión para que sea rechazada. Mientras tanto, recrudece la criminalización de la protesta social. Se allanan sedes de organizaciones sociales, sindicales, de partidos políticos y también las casas de los dirigentes, como sucedió con nuestro secretario general de la provincia de Córdoba. Milei destruye el Estado, elimina ministerios, liquida patrimonio público, intenta vender sus empresas, entregar los bienes comunes, destroza nuestros derechos laborales y se ha convertido en un muñeco de cuerda de las corporaciones económicas del mundo. Para Milei los derechos sociales son privilegios y los decretado a la Argentina y ha decretado a la Argentina zona de sacrificio. Dice, van a sufrir y solo va a haber extracción de ganancias para las transnacionales, sin límites sociales ni ambientales desde el Estado que proteja a su pueblo y la nación. Proyecta para el mundo un gobierno de transnacionales sin Estado. Por ello, en 6 meses de gobierno, 30 días los pasó viajando a reunirse no con los jefes de Estado, sino con los empresarios más poderosos. Mientras tanto, los resultados económicos en 6 meses de la gestión son catastróficos y frena el crecimiento económico de América Latina. Así va destruyendo el Estado social de derecho, así es en esta apretada síntesis cómo Milei arrasa con la justicia social. Para terminar, y desde acá le decimos, sin justicia social no habrá paz en la Argentina ni en el mundo. Y me despido con las palabras de mi profesor uruguayo Hugo Barbagelata cuando nos decía, neoliberalismo, cuántos crímenes y traiciones se han cometido en tu nombre que revelaría a los peores criminales profesionales del mundo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and I really wish you success in your fights with this new neoliberal far-right government that you have in Argentina. It's not the only one around the world. You know that the far-right are getting in rise also in Europe during the last Sunday elections results that we saw. They are really taking some more space in the European Parliament, in many countries, both in the western and eastern part of Europe, and this is around the globe, which is very, very worrying development. Now we will move to the countries that are having conflict or are in war, just to mention some before giving the floor to Shaher, but also Yemen, Sudan, Haiti, and not to forget the ongoing war in Ukraine, after illegal invasion from Russian Federation in Ukraine. But now we will give the floor to the Shahir Sayed, which is actually the Secretary General of PGFTU in Palestine. And after the recent developments in the Security Council in UN, we have more hope. I hope this hope will lead to the ceasefire at the end of the day and to restoration of the most of the lost civil and labor rights and freedoms. So, Shahir, you have the floor, my friend.
Thank you, Brother Solomon. Thank you for you and for our brother Luke Tringle, the Secretary of the ITUC. I am very happy to join you today of this important occasion to launch the 2024 Global Rights Index. The indicator is a vital tool that the contribution to the highlighting of the situation of human rights and freedom around the world, especially the rights of the workers, which are an unsettled part of this indicator. At this moment, we look forward to analyzing the funding of the index, which reflects effort to enhance human rights, transparency, and accountability. Unfortunately, this year result once again show that the Arab region ranks highlights in the terms of violations, which place a great responsibility on us towards improving the human rights situation in this region, in a particular worker rights are central of the social justice and economic sustainability. Unfortunately, the index reflects of the presence of the serious violations of the worker rights in employment areas where workers are from the establishing and joining union on
Can you ask the IT? Call? It's gone.
Disconnected. His line is disconnected.
Is that? Shall we call to him somehow? Are there some phone call that someone can do? To ask him to reconnect? Just check, Papa. Let's have one more try. Luke is calling to Shahir. Let's try to have a connection if they work that possible, but the internet connection is weak, as you can see. Even the phone is not answering. We have to conclude. Yeah. Okay, sorry for that. It was really important to listen again, Shaher, in this very terrible situation that we see that Palestinian people found themselves in after this war in Palestine and a lot of wrongdoing. Let's say that, not to say more. Let's allow the authorities and court authorities to classify and qualify what is actually the Israeli military doing in Palestine. But anyway, the workers' rights there, as you can see, very terribly violated. 2/3 of Gaza people actually are not in employment, or they don't have any source of income, and almost 1/4 of West Bank. And this is the only figures that ILO have. Maybe the reality check will even show that these figures are higher. But now we are coming to the end of our event. I want to thank to all the speakers for now. But before closing, I will give for concluding remarks the floor, sorry, to General Secretary of the ITUC, Luc Triangles.
Thank you. Very short, maybe on the story of Shaher that was unfortunately interrupted. We have been there with an international trade union delegation only 2 weeks ago. We could witness the effects of the current war on the situation of Palestinian workers. More than 235,000 workers lost their job. They're been put on the street without severance pay, without notice periods. Their wages should continue to be paid because they have not been legally fired. There is no payment of wages. So that has an immediate effect on poverty, on surviving in the West Bank. There are workers that we met that are actually living in Gaza, that were trapped by the conflict on the October 7th and now trying to survive in the West Bank, disconnected from their workplaces, disconnected from their villages, disconnected from the people, their homes, their relatives, which are still living in and surviving, trying to survive in Gaza. This is a very extremely worrying situation, an unacceptable situation in the West Bank and in Palestine. I just wanted to complete that story because we have been there together with Shaher and we have seen all what he has explained to us. So to conclude, we are here in the House of Labor. We are here in the ILO. This is the place where we need to make sure that these violations are heard. This is the place where we have to make sure that these killings are heard. And this is the place also where we need action to mediate it. What you have heard today, what you can read in our report, is absolutely unacceptable. We need to make the turn. Workers need rights, workers need protection, workers need justice, workers need social justice. We want to make sure that this 11th consecutive year where rights are in decline for workers has to make a turn next year. And for that, we need all of you to work on that. We need to continue to report on that. We need to make it visible to the world that this is happening. This cannot be hidden. And this is the ITUC International Labour Organization where we want action to make this not happen anymore in the future. Thank you very much for being here. And I give the floor back to Plamen.
Thank you very much, Luc, for those concluding words. And I only want to thank the interpreters and ITUC staff for the work done. But before leaving, just to invite you, all of you here, in front of this podium and this slogan that Monica is just wanna put there, and to make a picture, to have a picture on this very important event.
So please all move to the podium.
Please come to the podium, all of you. Thank you. Here, over there.
Yeah. Lift it a bit, Kemal. Yeah, so like this, yeah. And we can have people standing behind Kemal here. Yeah. So please come on the podium.
Come on here. Here.